Hey guys, before we get started, I want to thank you guys for watching this. If you want to looking for Caster Chronicles product and Caster Chronicles singles to buy, I recommend visiting the link below. Be sure to click the link in the description below so that they know we sent you from Happy Little Hug Factory. They carry a bunch of singles from Caster Chronicles, as well as other games like Force of Will. Hey guys, how's it going? And welcome to the first Caster Chronicles deck profile. This is going to actually be, at least this specifically one I'm doing, is going to be 3 different videos. One each week, and the explanation for that is it's not 3 different parts for one deck. So I'm going to be doing my mono orange deck today. This is my personal favorite deck, so I'm going to open with it. Next week I'm going to do my mono yellow deck, which is my next favorite, and then the third week is going to be my hybrid orange yellow deck. And the reason I'm going to be doing it like that is because these decks aren't necessarily that hard to make, but I really have a lot of fun with them and they're really easy to put together. And by doing so, I'm hoping that to help you guys sort of see how you can do this huge variety of decks, because Caster Chronicles is unique, especially like compared to, for example, Force of Will, on how you're able to interchange cards and how easily it is to be done. So what I do in my personal games, and so what I'm going to be showing you through these 3 videos, is how I have my mono orange deck, my mono yellow deck, and how I take certain cards out of both of those decks and combine them to make my hybrid orange yellow deck. So not only do I have a variety of picks to choose from, so I never get bored. I can also address certain threats if I see I'm being weak in certain areas that can be fixed by combining the colors, or if I just want to change things up. You basically get 3 decks for the price of 2 with these lists I'm about to show you. So I'll go through all that, and you can do this with other colors as well, but you're able just to take cards and insert them with relatively no consequence, but huge benefits or variety of things, which is unique to this card game for the most part. So I'm going to showcase that. But like I said, today we're going to start with mono orange. So we'll start with the casters. So obviously Orange Peko is my favorite one. It's the biggest one in here. I run 2 of them. You don't want to run too many casters because you'll run into them too much. I've been debating whether to insert more Orange Pekos and just have to put them face down when I get to them. It makes it so I have less access to a variety of abilities that the multiple casters allow me to have. However, it makes it so I can consistently have her effect and Orange Peko level 2's effect, which involves banishing Orange Peko. So even if she's face down, I can still get that effect. So it could be worth it to run more. I'll leave that up to your guys' discretion, but I'm still debating it. But Orange Peko level 1 is great because she can put a 1-cost sweets from your graveyard into your hand. That's going to be really important, as you guys will see. The main card that really makes this deck go is the 1-cost sweet, which we'll get to when we get to the servants. But so next obviously is Orange Peko level 2. Like I said, you can banish an Orange Peko to put a 3-cost or less servant that's orange from your graveyard straight into your field. That's a really great effect. You lose your 2 ether production by tapping her. However, you get a 3-cost in exchange from your graveyard, so you're not even wasting cards from your hand. So that's always a great ability, and it combos well with some other stuff that I'll get to later. And you can also tap her to put a sweets with total cost 2 or less from the graveyard into your hand. That's not as strong, especially compared to her 2 ether production you're giving up. However, in a pinch, that could be just what you need, and it's what I've used before too. So I run 2 of those because I want to make sure I get to her at some point. Worst case scenario, I have to put her face down, and I can use her effect, the face up effect, to grab her. Next, I have level 1 Sunnies. So this one is drawing an enemy card drawing a card if an enemy discarded a card this turn. So that'll especially come into effect with comboing with servants that I run inside of this deck, and it helps with that draw power, which is really important. I run 4 of her just because I really like that effect. I know I just said it's not good to run multiple servants, but she's really pretty also. It's a beautiful card. So I run 4. Maybe that's excessive. Probably is, but I should probably take 1 out and put an extra Peko in. Next we have Monostyle. So I run 2 of these. Once again, just having a variety of abilities. You can put target servant from an enemy graveyard onto the bottom of its owner's deck. This is really good, especially countering other orange decks that bounce these orange cards with Orange Peko back into their hand. It really helps taper that off, but it's also something you need to watch out for if you're playing an orange deck, if someone's running that Monostyle. Next we have Mia Lori. I just run 1 of her. Discard a caster, and an allied suite gains 1,000 tack till end of turn. I don't run two, I only run one because it's not an effect I necessarily need that often. I'm more about flooding the field. However, occasionally you run into the biggest weakness of this deck, which is a card with a high defense who is in reverse position. And sometimes it's hard to break through that, so this sort of helps in those tight scenarios. Next we have Trick or Heather. Draw a card if an allied spell or ability destroyed an enemy servant this turn. I have several of those spells, so it helps once again with draw power, a variety of abilities, a variety of face-up casters to help you make sure you're producing the correct amount of ether throughout the game. And lastly, I run one Nebula Salile. So if you would play a caster as part of your call phase, I can play this face-up from an allied graveyard instead. So I'm actually probably going to be running more of these because there's a card I really like that involves getting rid of a caster you have into the graveyard. And she's able to bounce back from the graveyard, especially if you're not having any casters in your hand or you don't want to put a face down card and take up that slot. Being able to bounce her is really important for a card inside of this deck. So I'll probably run more of her at a later point. So that's the casters. We're going to go ahead and move on to the conjures next. I don't have any field cards, just heads up. I only have conjurers and servants. I just don't really care for them too much, but we'll see if that changes. So first up is Paper Eating Virus. This is a 3-cost conjure. As break, which they didn't have any breaks in the new set, so this is, if they stop doing that, then breaks are going to become a very precious commodity. I still like break, so I'm running as many as I can. Target enemy player discards 2 cards. So like I said, this works with the one caster we talked about earlier, where you draw a card if enemy player discarded a card this turn. And especially if it breaks, that's really cool just to help gain that advantage. And I don't play too much hard casting it. I run 3 of them, unless it's really important. If your opponent's down to 3 or 2 cards in their hand, then it's really strong. It gives you the complete advantage because you know they're pretty much top decking at that point. So having that advantage with some other cards and making them discard is really good. This is my favorite conjure, Carrion Scrounge, so I run the full 4 of them. And this one is put target servant with a total cost of 3 or less from an allied graveyard into the field. So this one is basically just 2 cost. You get to play 3 cost. That's extremely powerful in my opinion. And it has break on top of that. So if you break, you get a 3 cost servant, assuming there's one in the graveyard. But that's really good, especially considering one of the strongest servants in this deck, and my favorite, is a 3 cost and has an enter effect. So being able to bounce that all the time is just really good in my opinion. Next, we run 2 Total Eclipse. I'd mentioned one of the biggest problems I run into is cards in reverse position with a high defense. This helps get around it, granted late game. It's a 5 cost, destroy target servant, and it also has break, which is extremely helpful if I break and I don't have to pay that full 5 cost. But sometimes there's a reverse servant with 6,000 defense that I just can't get around until I pull this card or some other card. So this just helps, nice easy way to get around it without having to buff and stuff like that. Next is Lapse of Memory. So this is a cool new card. It's a 1 cost. Target enemy player reveals their hand, choose a conjure card, they discard that card. So this helps both with Soul Bond now, with the Soul Bond mechanic, being able to get rid of that Soul Bond before they do the combo off and get those servants out. With total 1 cost, you're able to play early game and just nip that in the bud, as well as any other conjures that might be threatening. It also allows you to look at their hand, so if it's a new deck, turn 1 you can look at their hand and get an idea of what type of deck it is, what they're looking to play and all that, in addition to getting rid of a card. So being able to see your opponent's hand is just strong, and discarding a card is good on top of that. Lastly, this is what I was talking about, Swallow Whole. So it's a 1 cost, destroy target servant. If you do, banish a caster. So once again, we're to the destroying a servant that we need to get around sometimes. For 1 cost though, instead of 5 cost, is much easier to do, especially if you don't have the necessary ether, or you have the necessary ether, but in order to win the game, you need to play a servant, so you need to only spend 1, so this helps with that. So destroy target servant. If you do, banish a caster. So this goes to the Nebula, where if she's in the graveyard, you can play her. So you basically use this to banish Nebula and grab her from the graveyard. As far as I'm aware, I could be wrong, but you're able to tap Nebula to play this card and then banish Nebula for this cost. So you're not losing too much out of it as well. So it's a really strong card in my opinion, and I really like it. So those are the Conjurers. We're going to move on to the important part of this deck, which is the Servants. So this is obviously the main part of any Caster or Caster Chronicles deck, but in Orange particularly because you want to flood the field and just keep hitting for even the lowest amount of damage. So you'll get the idea of that here. So first up we have Juicy Creep. It's a 3 cost, 1,000 with Break, which is good. It helps once again with that field population. Being able to put a card in there for free if it breaks is extremely strong. Has Last Words to rest target enemy servant. Once again, helps with that problem I said where it has a problem with high defense servants. Being able to rest or reverse servant and then either kill it or just swing in for the game is really good once it dies. So I just have one of those, but I was debating putting in more, so I might put in more. Next is Cerebros. Once again, I only run one of. It's a 6 cost, 3,000 with double corrupt. And whenever this corrupts an orb, target enemy player discards a card. So combos with that servant, like I said before. Double corrupt, I think it was good to have in this deck to help speed things up if it's late game and I'm having trouble. And 3,000 is a pretty decent attack and defense to get around certain things. Next we have Rich Macaron. So it's a 2 cost. Once again, just run one of. Basically just having a variety of servants depending on the situation. A low 2 cost, 1,000 vanilla card is pretty decent. I was basically wanting something to grab from the graveyard when needed. That's low cost to put out early game, but it's not. Turn 1 and turn 3 are the important turns. Turn 2 isn't so much, so I don't want to put too much stock in it. Next I run 2 Afternoon Teas. So this is a 5 cost, so it's a little bit on the higher side, but it has 4,000 attack, which helps with those higher defense cards. As enter effect, put a Sweets with cost 1 from an allied graveyard into the field. So once again, with that 1 cost suite that I keep talking about is very important to this deck. I was really hoping they'd introduce more 1 cost suites. I'm hoping they do in the next set, but right now there's only one. But in the future, if they introduce a 1 cost suite, then orange is going to become very strong in my opinion. Next we have Zubaji. This is my favorite card and very important to this deck, so I run 4 of them. 4 Zubajis. It's a 3 cost, 2,000 attack, 1,000 defense. Enter effect is search my deck with a 4 1 cost suites and put it into my hand. So it has that search effect, so I can get that 1 cost suite, put it into the field possibly. If it dies, then I can start doing the bouncing effects. If someone puts it back into my deck from the effect of the caster I talked about, I have Zubaji to search it back out again. I can put Zubaji onto the field with level 2 Orange Peko to get the enter effect in case she dies. So I'm always putting her on the field, always getting that 1 cost suite. Speaking of which, I have 4 Crispy Cookies. So this is the 1 cost suite, 500 attack, 0 defense. The important thing is it's a 1 cost suite, so it works with every single effect we've been talking about. It works with Zubaji, it works with Afternoon Tea, it works with Orange Peko, and some other cards. So it's just a great card, and having a 1 cost servant is just really good inside of Caster Chronicles in my opinion. So having that and also being able to populate your field with it is great. Next is Toxic Turkey. I run this one because whenever it attacks a servant, it destroys the servant. So once again, getting around those really strong servants is really powerful. So I only run 1 of it because I have enough destruction in here, but it's just backup destruction essentially. For only 4 cost, isn't too bad. Hard Pancake, I run 2 of. It has Break. Once again, like I said, it's nice. It has no attack, unfortunately, but it has 3,000 defense, so obviously you would just play this in reverse all the time. And it has an enter effect where you put target servant in an allied graveyard into your hand. So this isn't just 1 cost like the other ones, but this is any servant I want gets to get bounced into my hand. So that's a really great enter effect, especially late game, maybe when some of the stronger cards have died and I need to bounce them back into my hand, bounce Zubaji back into my hand to play her again. Or if they had me discard cards that I needed that I had never played, being able to bounce those is really good. Next, I really like this one, is Patsier. It's a new card, 4 cost, 2,000. When it enters, your enemy player discards 2 cards. So once again, works with that a caster we had talked about earlier. It's a pretty decent 4 cost with 2,000 attack and 2,000 defense. And just being able to discard 2 cards that your opponent controls from their hand is really good, especially when comboed with other stuff. If you can imagine, maybe they hit the break that made them discard 2 cards. They pass to your turn. You make them discard 2 cards again. So now they're down 4 cards. And if they only had 4 or 5 in their hand, you've basically gain a huge advantage in the game. So I really like that card. Next, I run 2 Geyser Tiger. It's a 5 cost with 4,000 attack, just to help with that higher attack to get around certain things. Has last words, destroy target servant. So not only is he able to get around some higher attack and defense cards, but when he dies, he has another effect of being able to destroy more stuff. And that's a really hard effect to get around outside of bouncing him to make me play him again. So being able to play him, and even if he doesn't have a high enough attack to destroy something, you put him in reverse position, forcing them to attack him at some point, and then you get to destroy away once he dies. And lastly, I run 2 Beelzeborn Demon of Gluttony. So this is sort of my super late game, hopefully playing this to win the game card. So it's a 7 cost, 4,000, 4,000. Has double corrupt, so it helps speed things up if I haven't corrupted enough orbs by this point, which hopefully I have. And as an enter effect of destroy target enemy servant and target allied servant. So you need to make sure you have a servant on the field when you play this card. Ideally just a crispy cookie or something easy to kill. Or maybe you can combo it by having a guy as a tiger on there. You destroy it, it hits the graveyard, you can destroy 2 enemy servants by the end of the day. Because if you don't have another servant on the field, then she destroys herself. So yeah, technically you get to destroy an enemy servant, but for 7 costs, that's totally not worth it. But it's really good getting around stuff late game, having decent 4,000, 4,000, and having double corrupt is just a great card to have. Only run 2 of them because you don't want to be drawing into them a whole bunch. But yeah, so that's my mono orange deck here. I hope you guys like it. It's relatively easy and cheap to make overall. The biggest thing, as always, is the caster cards that you need to get. So once you get past those, the rest of it's pretty easy to come by, and a lot of it is pretty easy to pull inside of the packs. So I hope this gives you guys an idea, even if you can't make this exact deck, the overall idea of it with the field population and destruction, discarding, and how that combos with the casters gives you guys a good idea of where to start. And like I said, I'll come back to you guys next week with the yellow deck.